Hi and welcome into another hands-on tutorial. Today we'll be using our Ubuntu server, which we launched on a virtual machine lately, and we will install Terraform, use AWS and create S3 bucket. So let's hop into the console and see what we can do. So I'm on the main Terraform page. Terraform is a concept of infrastructure as a code, so we will actually be using AWS. We will firstly install Terraform, then we will use AWS to create S3 bucket from our console and from our code, and we'll be able to manage this state. So we'll be able to create this S3 bucket and destroy it, and in the future we'll go deeper into creating resources and maintaining your infrastructure from Terraform as a code. So first of all, let's go to Intro to Terraform, and here on the Get Started, we'll be using AWS. So install Terraform is the first step. The thing you will need to have for the AWS to be working will be also exporting the access and secret to be able to go to AWS, but let's just firstly install. So we will be using Linux today. So let's do the first step. It will update all the packages in the system and install the software that is needed for another steps of installation. If some steps will be taking some longer time, I will be speeding it up if necessary so that you won't have to wait. Alright, first step is done. Let's go to another one. So we will install the GPG key on our system. Then we will verify the fingerprint if everything is okay. So you can do the verification that it's in fact the HashiCorp package. Then the next thing would be to add the HashiCorp repository to our system. And after that, we will do another update to refresh the packages using the newly added repository for HashiCorp. And then the last step is only the install one. And let's see if we are good. So Terraform is available. Let's create ourselves a directory for the project which we'll be using. So let's here create a directory for all the Terraform stuff. Maybe there will be another project in the future. Let's go to Terraform and then let's create ourselves a directory for the project. So let's say maybe YouTube. Maybe let's call it YouTube. And let's come here and let's get back to the page itself for a moment. Let's get back to AWS and let's go for build infrastructure. The first thing we will need to do is those prerequisites which I already mentioned before. So your AWS access key, ID and access secret needs to be a part of the environment for the system. So you can use this particular thing no matter if you're on Linux, you can also do it on Mac. It will be an export of the environment variable. Then another thing would be to create something called provider and then the resource. Here in this example it's in one file, but I will be using two, so let's call it providers tf. Let's create it with touch and let's do vim providers tf. So this we can copy one-to-one. And let me explain. This first Terraform block will have the required providers. So it can be AWS, it can be Azure, it can be GitHub, which we'll be using in the future, and the version which we need and required version. The second block is the provider block. So in this particular example, we'll be instantiating AWS, and I will use US East 1 as a region. Here we can end this particular file, and we will create a file called main.tf. Usually it's it's called itself like the main file, and here we will create our first resource. So let's go to the page, and then we can use something like registry. So if we will go to registry, we can find many different providers and their modules, so-called. So let's go to a provider, and here we will look for AWS S3. And as you can see here, we have a lot of different services to pick through. So we will take AWS S3 and a resource called AWS S3 bucket, and you can see here that private bucket with tag. Let's try to create our first resource. So we have instantiated the provider already, so we can use those resources. So let's write the first one. Resource AWS S3 bucket. And its name, let's call it briefly bucket. Here actually we should pick the bucket name, but as you can see below, it's even optional. So if we won't give a bucket name, then it will be generated randomly. The issue with bucket names is that it needs to be, as we mentioned already in the hands-on on S3, that it needs to be unique across the whole AWS, not just your account. So let's write bucket, and I will call it briefly Terraform test bucket 1. And we will close that. The rest is not needed. So let's save it. One of the things that we will need to do will be the Terraform init command. It will initialize as you can see here, it's finding the version from this provider's TF which we created. It's installing the HashiCorp AWS provider module and making some basic setting up. For the sake of the good code, let's do Terraform FMT. It's a formatting function. So if you will see on cat main.tf, it does the 2 indents from the stub which I had like in the default one, and then the basic command is something called Terraform plan and apply. Let's first do plan. Plan is taking the files in this folder and checking the current state which is on the disk, and we can see here that we will be doing 1 addition, 0 changes, 0 destroy. We will create AWS3 bucket. So let's right now do Terraform apply. We will be asked to confirm that we want to create this resource, and I will write yes. Terraform will now go to AWS and create a bucket for ourselves. So it didn't took much, it took 3 seconds. And right now let's see AWS S3 list. Okay, it was AWS S3 LS. And as you can see here, we have our bucket created. We can also destroy those resources. So let's do Terraform destroy, so that I can show you that there will be no more buckets when we do AWS S3 LS later. You need to be very careful with applying and destroying. Check the change manifest so that you will be 100% sure that the things you want to do, So I will do yes here. If you don't want to confirm every operation like apply or destroy, you can do auto approve flag, but right now let's stick to approving everything. We will start destroying the bucket, and let's see one more time AWS S3 LS. And we don't have any buckets right now. So that's the beginning of our journey to Terraform. We will be using a lot of that in the future, creating many other resources and more complicated stuff. So see you later in another tutorial.